So many people feel like sculpting their arms means signing up for a life without fun. You might even think, I'm no fun when I don't eat and drink, or this event will be unbearable without snacks and wine. We're taking a look at these two thoughts and how they are keeping you stuck. I'm going to explain how to stop outsourcing the perception of fun to food and alcohol and learn how to start having actual fun using the think, feel, act cycle. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Arm Coach Podcast, episode 22. Hey, everybody. I hope you're having an amazing summer. I hope you're getting out with friends and family. Maybe you're going to a picnic or a barbecue. Maybe you're getting ready to go to a summer festival. Whatever it is, I hope you're having a great time. I thought that we'd spend some time talking about a topic that comes up all the time with my clients. And it came up a lot for me when I first started to try to sculpt my arms and also unwind the habit of overeating. And that is the topic of having fun. I also wanted to really talk to you guys about this because I know a lot of you out there are struggling with this. And I know a lot of you out there feel like sculpting your arms or losing weight means that you're going to stop having fun. I hear a lot of versions of these two sentiments. The first one is, I'm no fun when I don't eat and drink with others. Or this event will be unbearable if I'm not eating and drinking. So I'm sure that most of you listening have thought at some point or another, some iteration of one or both of those thoughts. And I will tell you, these were thoughts that were just front and center for me as well when I was first starting to sculpt my arms. I thought, especially the first one, I'm no fun when I don't eat and drink with others. I thought that all the time. And also thinking about, oh gosh, do I really have to go to this event and drink a club soda? Am I really going to have to go to this event and not eat cake? Like, oh my gosh, that's going to be terrible. And those thoughts, they kept me stuck for a really long time. And I know that they're keeping some of you stuck right now who are listening. Because after all, really, who wants a life without fun? Nobody does. So I really want to go into both of these thoughts on today's episode so you can really start to understand them and see how they apply in your arm sculpting journey. But first, I want to start with talking about what is fun. What does fun mean? Fun is really anything that we find amusing or enjoyable or entertaining. Maybe you think of other people or parties or hobbies or outings or activities as things that are fun. But the question really is, if those things are fun, what makes them fun? What makes a person or a party or a hobby or an outing or an activity amusing or enjoyable or entertaining? And that's where most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking. We don't think a lot about this piece. What makes something fun? But most of you will say the thing itself is what makes it fun. So and so is a really fun person, or that party was fun in and of itself, or going hiking, or going swimming, or watching a baseball game, whatever it is, those activities are fun. That's what makes it fun. But now remember the think, feel, act cycle. Remember what creates your emotions. What makes you happy? What makes you feel excited or amused or engaged? What makes you have these feelings? Your thoughts. That's how the cycle works, but that's not how most of us understand fun. We think that the thing or the activity itself is fun. We don't pay attention to our thinking. I was thinking about how to explain this to you guys, and something that came to mind was the idea that one person's heaven is another person's hell. Do you know that expression? What I enjoy or find amusing or entertaining is not what you enjoy or find amusing or entertaining, because you and I, we don't share the same thoughts. And if we did, then sure, we would both agree that the same thing is fun. But our thoughts are different. And so our perception of what is and is not fun is also different. As I was thinking about how to explain this to you guys, I was thinking about what I really like to do. and I like to do some kind of offbeat things. And one of them is that I really like folding my clothes into neat little pouches. I came across a video somewhere where they were folding their t-shirts, leggings, jeans, socks, everything really, into these tiny little pouches that kept the clothes folded real nicely, even if you were to drop them on the floor. And I was like, amazing. And then you can line up those little pouches neatly in drawers or in your closet. And listen, I love a neat, organized space. But anyway, for me, folding clothes has never been a depressing or boring activity to avoid. To me, it's always been an activity with a lot of reward. And I really like the look of the neat little pouches, and it's just so tidy. I've always really liked that. Now, here's the thing. This is why I chose to tell you this example, because most people do not think folding laundry is fun. Most people think the exact opposite. A lot of you listening are probably like, that's weird. I think folding laundry is depressing, right? So you and I have different thoughts. I have thoughts that make folding laundry into little pouches fun. And you might have thoughts that makes folding laundry into little pouches boring or depressing or weird. So the thing that I find amusing or enjoyable or entertaining is not the same for you. And the reason you don't necessarily find it amusing or enjoyable or entertaining, the reason why you don't necessarily find it to be fun is because you and I are thinking different thoughts. So with that example in mind, let's go back to the original thought. So the thoughts, I'm no fun when I don't eat and drink with others, or this event will be unbearable without eating and drinking. I want you to really, really pay attention. Pay attention to what you're saying when you think to yourself, I'm no fun when I don't eat and drink with others, or this event will be unbearable without eating and drinking. What you are saying is that the reason something is enjoyable is because of food and drink, and food and drink alone. The reason something is fun, the reason you will have a good time or a bad time is because of the food and drink, right? But what makes something enjoyable is your thinking. That's how the think, feel, act cycle works. Now, food and drink can make you appear to be more fun. It can make an event seem to be more fun. It can change our perception in a couple of different ways, and I want to explain that to you. The first, and we've talked about this before, eating and drinking provides an influx of dopamine to the brain. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter that creates the feeling of enjoyment. So that's the first way that it can change your perception. The second is that the dopamine you get from eating and drinking can dampen or dull or turn down the volume on a negative feeling that you're already having. If you go into a situation and you're feeling anxious or nervous or awkward or insecure, whatever it is, suddenly you will feel less of these negative emotions with an influx of dopamine in your brain. And then the third way, and we haven't really discussed this one as much on the podcast, but the third way that food and drink can change your perception of either yourself or an event is that food and drink depresses a part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, where thought processing and consciousness is centered. Basically, it quiets your inner critic. It's quieting all the thoughts that you're having, the negative thoughts that you're having about yourself and the situation. But whether or not you are truly fun and whether or not an event is truly fun actually has to do with your thoughts. You've just got so used to outsourcing fun to food and drink and relying on that influx of dopamine to change how you feel about yourself and about the situation that you're in, that you don't bother doing any of the heavy lifting yourself and paying attention to what you're thinking. Most of us don't even realize that there is work that we could be doing. We get caught up in that I'm just no fun. And this event just won't be any fun. And we feel stuck. But there's so much here that you can change on your own if you learn how to stop outsourcing the perception of fun to food and drink and learn how to have actual fun using the think, feel, act cycle. So let's look at what's really happening. I want to really go into these two thoughts. So we're really going to go into I'm no fun if I'm not eating and drinking with others, because I know that comes up for so many of you. It came up with me forever. I thought it for the longest time. I'm just no fun if I'm not eating and drinking with them. And I had all this evidence for this, right? I had a lot of evidence. I would go to a party and I just couldn't wait to get a snack and a drink. Everything leading up to the point at which my dopamine kicked in was so unpleasant. I'll tell you, it was much more than just the hour leading up to the party. I was often worried about the party. I was worried about going out way in the lead up, maybe days in advance. I might be thinking, like, who's going to be there? And I'm going to be awkward and I'm going to feel anxious. I'd be kind of worried about it, just kind of on a low level in the day leading up to it. Then the day of, I would feel anxious getting ready. I would be anxious about how I looked. I would be anxious about what I was wearing, that I wasn't going to fit in or have any fun. And you can understand why I often started eating and drinking before I even left the house. I mean, just the act of getting ready brought up all these negative thoughts for me, which created all these negative feelings. So I was feeling anxious in the lead up. Then I was anxious on the way to the party and anxious when I got there and anxious when I knocked on the door and walking up the steps. I was anxious arriving. And then I felt kind of awkward meeting people and awkward, right? Those first couple minutes when you're trying to figure out who's there and do you know anybody and where are you supposed to go? And the person you thought was going to be there isn't really there. I had all these negative feelings, and my brain was like, just find the food and drink. Just find the bar and the food table, and then you'll be okay. I felt very caught. I really did feel very caught by this thought. I'm just no fun if I'm not eating and drinking with others because I had all this evidence that that was true. What I wasn't considering, and what you're probably not considering as well, is really what makes you fun. We're fun. We're fun when we feel open or at ease or curious or adventurous or positive and silly, right? When we're not in our head, when we're not fixated on our arms and all of our shortcomings or our problems, when we're not complaining, when we're not too serious because we want to appear a certain way. We're usually fun when our focus is outside of ourselves, when you are engaging with the world around you. Most of us are not that much fun when we are stuck in our own heads and our focus is squarely on ourselves. And usually, how we compare to other people around us. And the problem is that you have gotten so used to using food and drink as the primary way to switch your focus. We use food and drink to quiet our inner critic and to switch our focus from being stuck on ourselves and stop obsessing on the negative and food and drink because of the effect it has on our prefrontal cortex. We're able to then kind of stop obsessing on all of that and actually turn our focus to the external world. But most of us have no idea how to do this on our own because we don't even recognize to begin with the role of our thoughts in creating how we feel. And you have to recognize this first before you can start to really change your eating and drinking. Here's the thing, and you know what? I didn't like hearing this news, and you may not like hearing this news either. But the truth is, if you think you aren't fun when you don't eat and drink with others, you're probably right. You probably aren't that great to be around. I wasn't. I really wasn't. I had so much negative thinking going on in there, and all this negative thinking, and then all these negative emotions. And you know what? I wasn't a lot of fun to be around when I wasn't eating and drinking with them. But I'm telling you this not because it's a indictment of who you are. I'm telling you this so you can start to really pay attention to your thoughts. Because without realizing it, you have become very, very good and very, very practiced at thinking a lot of unfun thoughts. Just notice your inner dialogue the next time you go out and go to an event. Notice that dialogue when you're getting ready, when you're headed there, when you arrive. Pay attention to that dialogue, tune into it, and you'll see what I mean. I guarantee you it is overwhelmingly negative. And I get it. I did this for such a long time. I was convinced that I wasn't fun if I wasn't eating what they were eating and having a drink. And listen, I was right. I wasn't fun. I was so stuck in my head thinking all these negative thoughts about my arms, about how awkward I was, how uncomfortable I felt. What do I say? What do I do? The whole time looking for something in my external environment to relieve how I felt. But I wasn't fun because I didn't have fun thoughts. I wasn't being curious about other people. I wasn't curious about my surroundings. I wasn't curious about the world. I was 100% stuck in my head, fixated on my failings and my shortcomings and feeling terrible. So you have to start paying attention to what you're thinking and notice your thoughts and notice how they're making you miserable if you want to learn how to have fun without relying on food and drink. This is crucial. So that's the first thought, but I want us to have a look at the second one because this also comes up for a lot of other people. And that thought is this event will be so unbearable without eating and drinking. How many times have you thought that? How many times have you thought, oh man, am I going to have to do this without a plate and a glass in my hand? Why bother even going? I'll tell you, I remember being invited to an extravagant wedding when I was in my 20s. It's so crazy when I think back on it. The entire time I was fixated on when I could get a drink and get some food. Now, mind you, I didn't know anyone except my date. You could not have picked a more gorgeous setting. And yet my brain was like, oh my goodness, obviously, this is not going to be any fun unless I'm eating and drinking. My brain was so practiced to outsourcing fun to food and drink that it couldn't even see everything amazing around it that was staring it in the face. I know that you're like, look, this isn't an extravagant wedding that I'm talking about. Like, this really is going to be a boring event. I'm really going to have to suffer through this holiday with my in-laws or have to go to this networking event, whatever it is. But I just want you to notice how narrow our focus can be when we outsource fun to food and drink. We get this kind of tunnel vision, and it becomes very difficult to see how things could be enjoyable because we've told ourselves over and over and over again that what makes something enjoyable is the food and drink. And I'll tell you something that I've realized. If the most interesting thing about the party or the people you're with is the food and drink, then I promise you, you are doing something wrong. The event isn't doing anything wrong. The people aren't doing anything wrong. You are doing something wrong. You are so used to being passively entertained by dopamine that when you have to put forward the tiniest bit of effort to figure out how to have fun, your brain is like, nope, no, thank you. There's no point in going if I'm not going to be eating and drinking. Remember, this all makes sense. I don't want you to start beating yourself up over this, okay? This all makes sense because your brain wants to do easy things. And there is no easier thing than having a bite, having a sip, and giving yourself an influx of dopamine to change your perception of a situation. Easy things offered humans an evolutionary advantage. Humans used to live in a world that took all this energy just to stay alive. And so being efficient, finding easy things to do helped us conserve energy. But being efficient about pleasure, that was the real boon. Seeking pleasure, avoid pain, and do it by expending the least amount of energy possible. This is something I talk about a lot on these episodes. This was the motivational triad that kept humans alive for thousands of years. Pleasure was food and sex and warmth, and those things kept us alive. And so, for our brain to find easy ways to get pleasure seemed like we had hit the jackpot. And now we're in this world where we have such an abundance of easy pleasure. We have all this easy pleasure that takes almost no energy to expend to get it. And so we keep returning to this easy pleasure. We keep having food and drink to have a good time and keep returning to have a good time without even realizing that we've outsourced fun to food and drink. Then we think about changing our eating and changing our drinking habits, or when we think about sculpting our arms or losing weight, all of a sudden it's like, well, okay, I guess I can, but then I'll sign up for this life of boredom. So the only way to cut through this, the only way to change is to really understand how the think, feel, act cycle works to create fun and your amusement, your enjoyment, your engagement, your excitement, to really understand how your thoughts create those feelings. And only then can you see your way out of this predicament, out of the predicament where you have unwittingly learned to outsource fun to food and drink. Only then, once you understand it, can you start to unwind the habit. But for most of you, if you don't understand that piece, you will just get stuck. You will get stuck because you don't want to sign up for a life of boredom. So for now, I just want you to notice how tied up food and drink and fun are in your world. How tied up is it in your perception of yourself and events and whether or not things are even worth doing? And if you realize, if you're listening and you realize, wow, fun and food and drink really do go hand in my mind, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. This is totally normal. Nothing's gone wrong. You need this awareness. You need to understand how much you rely on food and drink to be a fun person and how much you rely on food and drink to enjoy an activity in order to take the first step to learn something different. So for this week, just pay attention, just notice, and just ask yourself how much you have outsourced fun in your life to eating and drinking. How much have you allowed food and drink to be in charge of whether or not you are fun, whether or not an event is fun? That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be talking about a whole new topic. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, if you want to reach out, send me an email at Christine@christinerecord.com. And otherwise, tune in next week. Bye, everybody.